We just had our first match of the day from Shanghai Silverblade Mall Arena. Now we move over to the Snake Pit in Chongqing, where they'll be taking a match here. This is an exciting match for Snakes. They try to take on JD Gaming. Both teams desperate 4 points to try and contest top of the table. Snake want to try and close the gap between them as well as EDG, whereas JD want to bounce back from their second loss that they've faced so far in the summer split of the LPL. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Matthew Stewart. Joining me is Zach Rusty Pie. We're going to be bringing you the next match today, which is going to be Snake taking on JD Gaming. And this should be a fairly close match between the two teams.
I mean, if nothing else, this should be an exciting match. It is third place versus third place of the East and Western Conference, respectively. So there's definitely some excitement to be seen here between these teams going against one another. And then when you actually look at the teams themselves, they're always going to be exciting to watch play League of Legends individually. So seeing those styles clash is something I look forward to.
All right, so let's start with the style of JD, because a lot of people want to dive into Snake, so let's do that later. JD are a very team fights heavy team. They have improved substantially since Spring Split, and Summer Split looks like a decent split for them. Up until last week, they actually only dropped a single game in the LPL.
Yeah, they were pushing for first place. They have the head-to-head against RNG, and honestly, looking at JD play through the early portions of the split, we were underrating them a fair bit, maybe saying that this team could be the real deal as they started to lose, unfortunately. So the timing's coincided very well there. But for JD, as a team, when you really think about it, it's early game and it's late game. That was always the focal points for this side. A lot of the pressure that they get through their top side, through laning often with solo kills, sometimes solo deaths, their AD carries their late game insurance, and it's the top side of the map that gets them there through that early aggression.
Yeah, that's how JD tend to play most of the matches. And late game, team fights always going in JD's favor. It seems they've got that pat down in the LPL. For the side of Snake, though, we don't quite know what they're doing week to week, because they always seem to have a different strategy, a different pick, and just something unique being thrown out for their matches.
Yeah, for me, Snake are like a lucky dip, really, and it's not that it's a bad thing in any direction that you go. The roster constantly changing, but I think finally they've solidified themselves with the 5-man that they really want. So what they have been doing, for those of you that, if you haven't been watching the LPL or watching Snake play, is that they've had 2 supports playing in the bot lane and the support role, and then moving one of them to mid lane to help their jungler, moving their mid lane down to the bottom lane to play with their support. And that was the way they were running League of Legends, a funnel and then a mid laner in bottom lane.
Always gold funnel.
Playing mages, and then suddenly Light comes back. And now Light has come back. You were looking at a standard, conventional Snake style. But now Guoguo's also learned how to play the support, so we don't actually know anymore. I think this is the best roster that you'll see from Snake because it's diverse. In their strategic playbook, they can play mages bottom, they can funnel for their jungler, they can do all of that with just this 5-man.
Are they the only team we have left in the LPL that's still gold funneling? Because from what I remember, most teams have actually moved away from it since Rift Rivals.
I think this is the one that's primarily going to be funneling for certain. There may be niche situations where you consider it, but as we're moving on to 8.14, the further the further forward patch, the next patch in League of Legends, there'll be a lot less funneling. There'll be a lot more AD carry seen as well in the bottom lane, and a lot more scaling to be seen down in that role. So Snake are the last hope, the last man standing in that funnel meta for certain. And I think moving forwards, even they will start to get pushed away from it. But for the moment, they've still got that strength available.
Yeah, they still have that strategy. They still have a few tricks up their sleeve, and they're always innovating, trying to try something different every match they play in the LPL. And it's worked out so far for them in Summer Split. One thing that hasn't changed for Snake is their top laner in Flandre. He is still solid as a rock in the top lane, looking like one of the best, and it's one of the people we always have to highlight when Snake play an important match like today.
Yes, Flandre is the big man that we have to talk about, because when you look at Snake, it's all about SOFM. The whole game revolves around him for at least the first 6 weeks of this split. But the unsung hero that we can't speak enough about now is going to be Flandre. He has been playing out of his mind through spring and through summer as an individual performer in the top lane. His teleports have been amazing. And the champion pool that you'll see from him as well, very heavy in the Vladimir direction. Deals a lot of damage, takes a lot of damage, but that's because he's playing bruisers that try and constantly brawl and fight with you. And he's a walking highlight reel, Flandre, when he gets champions like that Vladimir, and he really is enabled to shine.
Which he is still happy to play in the top lane, and is one of the carries for Snake Esports, especially when SOFM is not the target of all the gold funneling, having a fantastic split, and has been for Snake for many splits in a row.
You know, a lot of the time when someone runs a funnel style strategy, I think of like the G2 going all in and Fnatic going all in on that single carry person. Having that second option in your team is always going to do wonders for you winning the game. And you can see even in a lot of these fights, Flandre is not necessarily in a winning scenario, in a winning team fight. The funnel part of the strategy does get targeted down, but he's still able to put in the work, still able to do the hard yards. and actually get those carry performances across. And that's that big thing that you're looking for Snake, that extra flavor.
He's always looking to fight as well, which is great for Snake since they're a team that can spontaneously start team fights, which is quite scary if you're going up against JD, because you might spontaneously start a team fight, but they're a team that is really good at team fights itself, so it could be a big clash between the two styles here.
And for me, I'm actually looking towards the jungle more than I am anything else. When you look at the spontaneity, SOFM is anything but that when it comes through his early pathing. He's got a very clear-cut strategy in place. The team that they're level 1, Snake in particular, play very well around that. Their vision placement is something that we'll have to look at level 1 to enable SOFM. But Clid is not someone to back down from a challenge. Clid is someone to embrace that challenge with open arms, take the duel, try and take the fight. The risk is when intervention comes in from other members of each respective team, where we don't know who's going to come out on top.
Well, let's first take a look at the lineup. Zoom, Clid, Yagao, Loken, as well as Lumao are JD's team.
Now, JD are a very strong team. Still, Yagao is the star player, but the Dumpling duo, when you incorporate Zoom, have been playing very well so far this split, and Clid thrown into the middle of that, definitely still showing up.
Up against Snake's roster, Flandre, Style of Me, Guoguo, Light, as well as Maestro.
Yeah, now Light is going to be the starter this time around. Still no Crystal for those die-hard Snake fans. You're not going to be seeing Crystal, but SOFM is there, Flandre is there, Guoguo is definitely still there to play, and he has been performing decently well himself with all of these varying styles that have been thrown at him.
And most commonly we see him working with, when he's working with SOFM, he is gold funding for SOFM. If not, he's in the bottom lane with Maestro or Hutia, the secondary supports. However, when it comes to JD, their mid and jungle synergy, that duo is notorious in the LPL. They have a few very interesting strategies, a few unique picks that only they will play together. And they synergize well in that mid lane. Could be a key for JD to try and take down SOFM.
Yeah, you'd be looking at the 2v2 skirmishes for certain, and we've briefly mentioned the top lane, you know, Flandre being a very big deal. The third member there is Zoom. Now, Zoom I actually think has been playing decently well, but the risk that Zoom always runs as a player, and particularly into Flandre, this will be very curious to me to see how this one pans out, is Zoom goes for solo kills quite often, but Zoom also solo dies quite often. So that was a lot of the spring woes that JD really suffered for themselves, is whilst he could be a strength, he could also be the undoing of the team. And with Flandre as his opponent, you give Flandre even the smallest of margins, runs away with the game, teleports bottom, gets a team fight, the game's over, Snake win.
But that's a lot about Zoom during spring split. Do you think he's shortened up some of these weaknesses during summer, or is it exactly the same as what we saw last split?
So I think a lot of that is draft-based as well. Flandre is a big, heavy bruiser, the type of player that will be coming at you. So I think that Zoom, in order to match the top lane, has to go back to the spring type of style and take the fights confidently, or Snake run away with too much of the map.
Well, we're about to get into the first match of this best 3 series, and before we go, Flandre has something to say about Zoom in the top lane.
我觉得京东的话，这个赛季打得非常的好，他们每条线的团队协作都非常好，所以我觉得我们要战胜他们，只能在我们整体交流上还有配合上要比他们更胜一筹。卡比兽的话，我觉得他对线这张脸就摆在那，就感觉打谁都不亏吧，所以我觉得还是跟他5-5开就差不多了。
Ooh, some strong words from Flandre as he's trying to bring down Zoom looking across from him, and that challenge is something that Snake have got to meet as they are trying to bring down JD, who so far have only dropped 2 sets in the summer split. They're first going to Invictus Gaming, who are currently head and shoulders above everyone else in the league. Their second loss to TOP just a few days ago, as they are looking to return to form after an uncharacteristic loss to a middle-of-the-pack team.
I mean, ultimately, if you're looking at your schedule, you're going to pack most of your time into how you're going to dismantle Snake versus looking at TOP. So I don't necessarily blame JD too much for falling down to TOP. No one is really expecting their rise and kind of the creativity that's coming out of that squad, but they need to have a very clear-cut game plan against Snake, and I can already see it in that ban phase there.
Yeah, getting rid of the Funnel Graves, even taking away Maestro's Shen, and then also eliminating the safe Gragas from SOFM. That's something he's been playing when he has played those standard junglers.
So my question was, what was going to be the priority pick? Now, because Kindred made it through ban phase, I like the fact that they're continuing to pinch that jungle pool, forcing SOFM out of champions, out of comfort zones, and out of power picks, but that means that they're giving away the Swain. And with the Shin ban, I was like, okay, do you grab the Swain here as your priority pick and then just try to smash the bot lane because Light is relatively new to the roster, or is it still all about SOFM?
Well, right now it looks like it's about the counter pick for SOFM, as Kindred locked in very early for JD. Clid is definitely a jungler who survives, or thrives, I should say, on these independent gankling junglers like Kindred. Very fond of affecting that mid and top lane. We know Loken and Mao have been doing rather well on their own, but a nice safe Orianna locked in for either Gogol or Light, and that's SOFM locking in that Sejuani to try and deal with it.
Yeah, and already we have the makings of a massive 5v5 wombo combo style of composition coming out of Snake. You've already got a decent ball delivery system, you've got great CC to follow up onto the Shockwave, and no surprise that with this iteration of Snake's roster, they've kind of gone back to basics. They've moved away from a lot of the gold funneling, and it's been more about those big skirmish-oriented team fights where it's about disengage, re-engage, and kind of this explosive second wind that Snake seem to find, and you have all of the tools with these three champions.
Yeah, flanking from multiple directions has often been Snake's MO in these large skirmishes and fights, whereas JD looks like they're just going for comfort on their side. We've got a very early Zoe pickup for Yagao, massive on that champion. He's one of the players who can really try to rival Scout on that type of Zoe in the mid lane, and then also a Morgana in the bottom. I expect that to go to Lumao just because Loken has a propensity to favor AD carries, but he has played a few more mages lately though.
And I feel like you need to ban the Swain here if you're Snake. Interesting that they went for the Rakan ban. I mean, I guess Morgana could theoretically still flex around. Maybe they've seen something in scrims. I don't quite agree with that one. I think it's a bit of a throwaway. And Pyke too. They know something about the Morgana that I do not.
Yeah, maybe they do think that he's going to Loken down in the bottom lane. Just take that safe pushing lane. Of course, the Tormented Soil keep you nice and defensive.
My only concern here is then that just gives you the Swain Morgana lane, which is just so devastating. So why not just take the Swain, force them onto the Morgana, and then take away any other pushing-oriented champion?
Well, you've already got the Orianna for Light.
I just think
you give the Swain to Flandre? You want him on like Vladimir?
No, you give the Swain to Loken.
I see, I see.
My problem is that they targeted the support pool to try to force the Morgana onto the marksman position as opposed to forcing it onto the support position.
But instead they're focusing down on the support
That's
position.
Why.
Yeah, Tahm Kench locked in to help keep that safe, and now we see a second support which would put that Morgana in Loken's hands.
So by grabbing hold of the Tahm Kench, they're saying, okay, we took away kind of the kill-oriented supports. They've only got a couple of pieces of CC right now, and now with the Tahm Kench, we have the ability to disengage from it. Likewise, they could just wait that they don't feel very comfortable taking the Swain. Maybe Snake have played JD, and maybe Loken's not putting up great numbers on it, so he forces him onto a Morgana, which seems to be much more of a comfort pick.
Well, we do see instead the Malphite.
Malphite
Locked in for Zoom in the top lane. Tanks are back in Flandre. Oh boy. We always talk about Snake being the mad scientist. So often our attention is turned to SOFM, but we got to remember that Flandre was the original mad scientist. Smite top lane with Fizz, Hecarim. This guy's done it all, but now he knows he's up against that Malphite. Seems like instead of that Urgot, we're just going to get a classic tank versus tank.
Malphite has been cropping up a bit more globally, most recently in the LCK. It's no longer just the Trinity Force Malphite. He's got a lot more flexibility in his itemization, usually going for that Iceborne Gauntlet. So we'll keep our eyes on what exactly Zoom's build path is going to be, and if he's going to try to match any side lane pressure, or if he's going to be all about that 5v5, which JD Gaming, you heard it from the desk, they are a very strong 5v5 team. That's the style that they like to play in. And then Snake, recognizing that, have gone back to basics. They are also building a 5v5 very stock standard composition.
So what are we expecting then? The teams to just sit back for 10, 15, 20 minutes, farm it up, try to see if they can find a few picks with the Sejuani, with the Kindred, and then start fighting over Barons?
Well, both of our eyes are going to be on Clid and SOFM, especially in that early game, and then you just one eye each, cross-eyed, chameleon style. But then you have to look at the power points and the windows that they have to play in. Aurelia and Sejuani have so much control over the river. And on the other side, it's Kindred, so you have a lot of skirmishing potential in the 1v1, but in the 2v2...
It's a little more dicey.
Exactly, and I think that's where Snake want to play in, but Snake have never been, you know, hunters. They're not dueling junglers, they're tracking junglers.
Reactionary to SOFM leading the charge, not necessarily moving in tandem with SOFM from the get-go. That could be a bit of a problem when you consider these side lanes are Morgana Dark Binding, Alistar Pulverized Headbutt, top lane, you've got the Unstoppable Force for Malphite. If SOFM oversteps, unimaginable for a player like him, There's a lot of CC that could put down some big damage, allowing Kindred to just walk up and finish off a kill.
I just have a feeling that for the first 12 minutes of the game, it's going to be about, does Yagao land the skill shots? And if so, then there's just so much power behind Kindred and Zoe that they can really take over this map. But if he's not on point with his Zoe, it's very easy for an Aurelia and a Sejuani to execute on river control after Aurelia's first back, depending what item it is. So
then we're looking to Yagao to carry through the mid lane, and he's really been the guy who has been stepping up. I believe he was your personal rookie of the split for spring.
He is the rookie of the split for spring.
Yeah, and now he gets the chance to go up against Guoguo, who's still looking for redemption on this Aurelia, looking for more wins for Snake, but already you can hear the crowd chanting before the team logos are even on the screen. That's from the diaphragm. That is deep.
I feel like Snake got 12 cheers there.
They are also using megaphones, which is also cheating, I believe. But hey, we've loaded onto the Rift. Defensive lines from the two teams. JD currently 8-2 in the standings, taking on Snake, who are at 6-4, with JD in second place in their group, and Snake in third.
So the big thing for Snake here is that while we're in cross-conference, Snake are really competing with Edward Gaming. Because of the nature of the playoffs, every single series win matters because you climb up that much farther up the standings, and Rogue Warriors have begun to open a very sizable distance between them and second place. So Snake, they're within touching distance of EDG, and as EDG continue to struggle, falling down to BLG, falling down most recently to Invictus Gaming, there's a very real possibility that they start snowballing and slingshotting their way up into quarterfinals, looking at possible semifinal sitting spot for the Western Conference.
And I love how Snake right now, the team that they're trying to beat is EDG, an organization that Snake has been very close to since their inception. And now they get the chance to prove, hey, this year we've got our own arena, we've got our own chance to go to Worlds.
And then on the other side, JD Gaming are within touching distance of RNG. These two teams constantly trading between second and third place. Without Uzi, RNG don't quite have the same spark that we saw the MSI champions, and they're very quickly starting to make a name for themselves. This is not a team anymore that's a someday type of team. This is a right now type of team. So if you're looking to get on the ground floor of what's going to be a very exciting organization in the LPL, why not pick JD Gaming?
Yeah, currently doing very well in the standings, 8-2. They've been putting out some great performances. Loken is absolutely a name you've got to keep your eye on for AD carries. He's often in that conversation for some of the best AD carries in the league, especially with his performance so far in summer, as he has recently started to step up. We've always known he's had the potential, but now we're starting to see him reach it.
I'm still not sold on Loken. I know that Raz and Clement and possibly...
I'm on it.
Even Dom are starting to ride the Loken hype train, and he has been playing better, but I just don't see the same ceiling that Loken has comparatively to some of our others. That said, I do see that ceiling on Yagao. You saw his runes flash there for the Zoe. Yeah. I think this guy is a true superstar, and if you're really going to have a franchise player for JD Gaming, I'd build it around Toothpaste.
Yeah, you know, I think we can just start to abbreviate it to skilling, because we use that phrase so frequently. The skill ceiling. Yeah, the skilling. Klid's also showing a bit of growth towards his skilling, as he's got the Dumpling Brothers, Zoom and Yagao, on both lanes aside of him right now. Looks like he's going for some double jungling. Is he able to get the triple buff here over SOFM?
Would be some fancy footwork, and he's able to do that because Zoom has so much pressure in this lane. Now, to be clear, we call them the Dumpling Duo because Chinese audience calls them the Dumpling Brothers because they look so similar. There's the white dumpling and the black dumpling. One of them has light hair, one of them has dark hair. You can see how they got that nickname. And they are kind of the standout solo laners of JD Gaming, which have started to empower a jungler like Klid. Klid is a hunting duelist-oriented jungler. He finds his advantages by playing assassin-oriented junglers. He wants to fight you, and he wants to kill you, and then snowball an advantage from there. As we're going pretty fast and furious down this roster
all
here.
These stats. Yeah, ooh, SOFM has found Yagao. That's the Sleepy Trouble bubble landing. Stun is ready off the back, but Yagao will flash
his
before
real
SOFM
flash
can activate it. Yeah. As opposed to his fake flash.
As opposed to one of 20 million flashes that Zoe has access to. Yeah, there we go, round 2.
That's the one. Maestro, let's see what these stats are. KDA, he's 5th in KDA at 4.31 of supports, 4th in wards placed per minute, and I don't know if you remember the stat from earlier, Snake are actually number 1 in total wards placed per game. I don't know if that's because they play longer games on average than most of the other teams in our league, so that they have more opportunities to place these wards, or if it's because they are more aggressive with their vision, especially off the back of Maestro.
They are a slower paced team, again, because a lot of their early game pace is dictated by SOFM, and he's not a killer jungler, he's more of an outmaneuvering jungler. He doesn't want to find you and kill you like Clid does, he wants to outfarm you and deny you experience and gold from your jungler. And then once he feels comfortable, then he goes in.
That's the flash knock-up. Again, the Sleepy Trouble Bubble. What a stun! Clid walks up and still First Blood goes to Yagao. That was an how did he hit the stun across the two of them that quickly?
Just beautifully executed right there, and I like the fact that it was a 3-man effort. So while we just talked about Maestro, we haven't talked about Lumao. And I feel like Lumao is actually the better support between the two in this matchup, and he was able to slip up in there because instead of taking use of his back timing to back with his ADC, he instead just walked mid.
And that's where we see the easy follow-up as Yagao lands the Trouble Bubble on an unmoving target, and even Clid gets the assist.
So why this is important is now Aurelia is playing from the back foot. Good news is that she still has access to her flash, but you can already see she's starting to itemize into MR, and it's always really a question for me of what Aurelia is going to grab first. Is it going to be the boots or some sort of resistances that go along with those boots, either Merc Treads or Ninja Tabi, or is she going to go for the Sheen or the Phage? Naturally, when you have the Sheen, your kill threat potential, especially at level 6, is just out of control. Against a Zoe, she still might have it, so that's where the tides might turn as we kind of cusp over from level 5 to level 6. And why it's so important that she has that kill threat is that's how Aurelia dominates a lane. It's not necessarily in her creep control, especially across from Zoe. Zoe's going to be able to clear those creeps from level 5 onwards, and then just have so much poke threat about how she manipulates and controls the lane. Aurelia needs to do it by having a low creep, having the threat that she can bounce off a minion and immediately onto your face.
And look at how Yagao is forced to play as he comes back into this lane. SOFM went for Krugs, didn't even finish the camp, and then raced mid as he got to level 6. Even Lumao's coming up over here with double control ward, no flash. Because remember, Yagao used his flash to escape SOFM's gank earlier, so already Snake are set to capitalize on that Aurelia strength. But Yagao is just playing on the backside of this wave.
Yeah, but even with the double control ward, we saw multiple red pings go down from Snake. They're very aware that they've made their way up through the river. Good cross-map communication from Maestro and Light. As you can see, Maestro was also standing behind the tower. Although his luck might run out. Here comes the trap.
That's Lumao getting the knock-up. That's the Sleep of Trouble Bubble. Immediate cleanse to get out of it. Ooh, that Paddle Star just barely out of range. But Maestro escapes.
I feel like the damage really has been done in that they forced Maestro out, and now they have access over this blue buff. And SOFM, he doesn't have the proper information. He's instead just going to immediately back. He could lose access to both blues here.
Ooh, that's a Trouble Bubble landing. Paddle Star from the side for some more damage.
Yep, they're going to contest it.
And there goes the invade. Loken steps up and places the first ward in Tribush. You can see SOFM already went for his own recall, picking up that challenging Spite and Bomby Cinder, so not going to be able to make it to his own blue in time, but still defensive vision from JD as they follow up off of the success of finding Maestro out of position. And already JD starting to take an early advantage against Snake through their jungle pressure, through the roams from Mao, and Yagao's threat on that Zoe.
And this is so important against Snake because SOFM really does set all of the pacing for this team. So even tiny advantages like this that just look like little micro cuts can really bleed Snake out over time, because if SOFM doesn't feel like he's in a position of power, he doesn't put anyone else in a position of power. He's a very selfish player. He himself has gone on the record saying this. They've been working with it. Yeah, he's matured over time, but he's not quite there yet. If you give him gold, if you give him the funnel, he's a gorgeous player to watch. Yeah. But if you start denying him resources, he doesn't have a lot to really turn the tide.
It's been a well-known weakness of Snake for quite some time, and while it has bitten them in the past, it still seems to be working out for them when he is able to get ahead, as he is such a strong voice for the team. But now, on this specific composition, he will be taking a bit more of a backseat, though he does still provide that engage for the team with that Glacial Storm. So we should be looking to see how he groups up a little bit later, but right now Snake's early laning phase has been stalled out a bit as Clid will start the Infernal.
I really like this. I feel like Clid is trading his blue buff, or what he thinks he's trading his blue buff, for the Infernal Drake. So the pings went down, and his assumption is that either he's taking my blue buff or he's not. In fact, he actually sends Zoom to go check it. So he gets the best of both worlds in that he slips away with the Infernal and he'll be able to pass that blue buff onto Zoe. And he's doing it because they see that Zoe is in the mid lane. So they know that she's not rotating over to take blue. So he just assumed SOFM's going to take it. That's totally fine. But another slip up from Snake. Not quite the jungle pathing that they need. And they don't really get anything out of this.
And look at the trade-off as well. You're also seeing Light and Maestro back away from that bottom lane. They knew the dragon was just taken. They didn't have any vision in that river outside of the wards placed in lane and then a ward in Tribush. And they had to give up even more CS now to Loken on that Orianna getting some damage. Now Rift Herald started and cancelled by SOFM as he is floundering seemingly in this matchup. His own lack of decision-making or decisiveness seems to be hurting him, and that's very uncharacteristic of SOFM. He's normally one of the most decisive, I'm going to go in and take your Raptors, I'm going to go take his blue buff, I'm doing Rift Herald now kind of guys.
Yeah, I'm actually really confused as well, Dom. I'm on the same page. I'm watching SOFM's pathing, and I'm like, this is so bizarre. This is the third time now kind of consecutively in a row that he's been indecisive, either with his back timers or when he's actually going to prepare his back where he's pathing, and he's just not taking anything on the map. And again, those micro cuts will start to expand a bit more.
He's currently fighting for vision behind the dragon pit, behind that red pit. Lumao happily just trading that vision with him, but it should be noted, there's nothing over here. This entire side of the jungle has already been cleared out by Clid. He's only 3 jungle CS ahead, but in terms of those neutral objectives, he is just on point this game. Whereas SOFM is busy catching farm right now. And it is still only a 200 gold difference between those junglers, so not manifesting itself too much. In the mid lane, it's about another 700 gold. In the top lane, it's pretty much even.
But as you were saying, there's nothing left for Snake on the bottom side of the map, but look at how much vision and how much gold they've expended over no objectives down there. They can't contest a red buff, there's no dragon to take. The Scuttle Crab hadn't spawned, but that's 1, 2, 3 control wards alone, and then another 4 trinket wards. So just the gold value for what you're getting out of it, nothing.
I mean, we did just see Minion Dematerializer used on that cannon wave, perhaps trying to unlock that minion wave and roam it towards mid,
but
try
they
to go for a push.
Rotated up to the top side and decided to take their back. So if that was the case, then there's miscommunication with Guoguo, who's like, I could make use of your Minion Dematerializer, or I could take this moment to take it back. So a lot of kind of selfish play individually from Snake, and they're missing some of these windows of opportunity to try to snowball the team ahead.
Or at least make action. Teleport, he's not able to use it, as he instead decides to just walk in with Yigao still only just now getting that flashback up, playing safe in that lane. Loken happily just dropping Tormented Soil under Tormented Soil. I feel like this is probably one of the saddest champions to see Loken on. He's a player that is very emotional, kind of like Doinby. He really comes to life in this series. Morgana, not exactly known for her hyphy outplay moments.
Oh no.
That makes me a little bit sad, but uh-oh, Zoom stepping up. That was the cleanse picked up, I believe, from a minion as Yigao picks up a barrier, and the quick rotation from the rest of JD. Lumao's holding the fort down in bottom lane, mid-tier 1, undefended by Snake. All that vision they set up gets cleared out, and then Snake crumble.
And then likewise, they didn't have the vision on the top side, so lost track of where Zoom was. And it's not like Malphite was the big pivot point for that mid tower falling down. It's just kind of a natural aspect of having Zoe in that mid lane. But Snake, they're not responding with anything. They're not trading any of these these losses back.
Now they're playing with SOFM's vision. He tries to bait it out, but still gets caught anyways. He's got Flash, gets hit by 1. That's the Paddle Star. Flashes the wall, and Maestro and Light are there to protect him.
And this is going to continue to bleed, not just past SOFM being chunked out or the blue buff, but now full access and control over to that bottom tower.
And look at this Maestro, even dropping that flash to pick up a heal. Can't stay here as the blue buff has been taken. Clid happily going to clear out this vision and deny this while Loken pushes the minion wave up. And as you said, it's not the mid lane that fell apart for Snake, it was the jungle. And it cost them mid, now it's costing them the bottom tier 1.
They managed to walk their way back on it because Golgo did the good job that he disappeared into Fog of War. He's now going to be spotted out by a very deep control ward in Snake's jungle. But JD Gaming giving a lot of respect to the fact that Aurelia had gone missing, and they obviously didn't want to commit to a full 5v5 in the bottom side.
Still just playing it safe. They don't want to risk it. I can't believe it. JD not want to risk it? Oof.
They're a measured team.
Yeah.
I mean, they like their 5v5 skirmishing, but they also like their set plays, and it has been a rather controlled game for them. credit to Clid and his pathing, and credit to JD Gaming as a whole so far. Their cross-map communication to make sure that Clid is getting access to SOFM's jungle, and they're able to track him, have really slowed down any sort of snowball that Snake might have had. It's a small gold lead, but we usually don't see this.
Yes, and I think the point where we have to say that Snake are still running a point of strength is Flandre in the top lane. He's 30 CS ahead of Zoom, level 11 to level 10 on that Mundo. Eventually, he's going to be unkillable. When you look at the damage sources for JD, Zoe, you can't outburst a Mundo. Morgana, you can't outburst a Mundo. Clid is really the only answer to that, and right now he's busy just trying to scale up. Taking a look, he's at 3 stacks currently, and with that smite, is denying SOFM even more gold.
And now the pivot,
real tough, yeah.
The pivot point of mid, as it's Yagao and Lumao that are coming up. SOFM, you know he's there.
Oh, caught by the trouble bubble. Remember, he has no flash from last time. Wards and double sweeper to try to clear this out. Again, the communication from Snake just seems to be slightly off as they're dropping double sweeper. They're getting caught out, knowing that JD are missing.
But there should be a bit of a tempo shift here because multiple backs need to come through, and Snake have now loaded all of their players up into the top side, so they have great access and offense over top tower as well as the Rift Herald. I feel like this is going to be the next big fight. Loken can join this with TP himself. And I think this might be the step up for the 5v5. The Sunfire has just been completed for Zoom, so Malphite's fine to be like, okay, I'm ready for the 5v5. Send me in, coach. Although, now he's facing across Moriana, so it doesn't feel great.
That magic damage absolutely going to hurt. Lumao still trying to maintain vision around that Rift Herald.
So the call has been, I'd rather prioritize the mark. Kindred's going to pick up the mark onto the Scuttle Crab. She's probably then going to take the free Cloud Dragon and then possibly look for that bottom tower, unless Loken can get it on his own. But it should be an outer tower trade, still advantage to JD because they're getting more objectives unless Snake rotate into Rift Herald.
Yeah, we're even seeing the Cloud Dragon being taken. Loken doing his best to push up in that bottom lane so that he can keep Flandre busy from checking the river. Cloud Dragon picked up, it's now 2, and as you said, the top tier 1 is traded back by Snake.
Now, they could assume that the Smite had been used to take the Cloud Dragon, which forces SOFM to immediately go on Rift Herald. Nope. He's not even going to risk it. Okay, that's fine. We'll trade the outer for the outer. It's just a cloud, not the worst case scenario. We need to back spend our gold and start mounting a defense around this Rift Herald. But the Rift Herald is so much more important for Snake than it is for JD Gaming. They've already broken that mid tower. If they get it, it feels great because you can use it on an inner structure, but they still have things like a Morgana, like a Zoe. They don't need the Herald to siege, whereas at this point in the game, Snake would definitely need the Herald to siege.
Absolutely. I mean, even with JD breaking down the bottom tier 1 because Flandre, again, not communicating with the rest of his team, doesn't know where that Kindred is on the bottom side of the map after hearing the Dragon call out, has to back away and trade it back over. That is opening up so many options for JD, but we're still seeing Loken hang out on that bottom side of the map. And Light and Maestro starting to get pretty strong as that Luden's Echo is now finished on Light, and we're getting closer to the Triforce completion from Guoguo. So with only 2 minutes left on that Herald timer, now we can see Clid leaping onto it, set to start it off.
Okay, they're pulling Flandre. It feels like Snake do want to mount an assault for this, but they're losing a lot of time. Here comes the TP, a little bit late.
3,000 health, 2.5, getting chunked lower and lower. They managed to get the kill onto it, but somebody needs to pick it up. Yagao prepares the paddle star, picks it up. Now is the target as Flandre gets headbutted out of this fight. Light could be looking for the shockwave as JD. They've got what they came for. Now they're just retreating back into lane.
And this has been the story of Snake for the last 18 minutes, slow to the punch. Their indecisiveness are costing them crucial seconds. And against a team like JD Gaming, who are no longer just a middle of the pack team, you're falling farther and farther behind. This Rift Herald, if it's not used on top tower, is going to be a massive charge on an inner structure, either bottom or mid, which gives them so much more control over Baron that spawns in less than a minute 30.
The pressure is continuing to mount like a kettle ready to blow. Snake are trying to keep the lid on this game. It's so close for Guoguo to finishing off that Triforce, and then he'll really be ready to fight and take it back against Yagao, but double stopwatch now ready on both Yagao and Loken, those 2 squishy targets. That Malphite also, as we said, completing the Sunfire, picking up a Phage on top of that.
I like the fact that he went for the Sunfire Cape to make him more accessible in a side lane. We said that we would track what Zoom's itemization was going to be. One of the cool things about Malphite is that he has so many different options about, am I going to play the true 5v5? Am I just going to be that massive frontline tank and stack resistances? Can I play a side lane? And I like it because you talked about earlier how Flandre, there's nothing going to stop Mundo from scaling up, from walking into everyone's faces, and there's no kill pressure. But if Malphite is constantly dragging Flandre to a side lane, which, I mean, that sounds weird to say, but Flandre could definitely bait into it, then you completely deny any of that aspect and you let Morgana and Zoe just spell fling freely in the 4-man unit.
Now we do see a very deep Herald activation. Yeah, taking a very long walk. You can see Guoguo's up there as it looks like JD are prepping that wave. Meanwhile, SOFM is trying to dive bottom. They set up the stun, but he gets the ultimate knock-up. That's a 4-man dive. Flash from Zoom in order to escape. He will end up going down if he gets hit by anything else. There he is. Maestro pops up and picks up that kill. But that Herald is still prepped and ready in the top lane. Guoguo's trying to sit back and defend it as Flandre is looking to push back at tier 1 and answer. Loken's got to protect this Herald. And there goes the second charge. Even Clid is getting in on this, and Guoguo decides he doesn't want anything to do with 2 people pushing in. It becomes 2 turrets for 1 and a kill. And JD are opening up more and more of the map. And as you just said, Baron has spawned, and now Snake have got to defend from even further behind.
So naturally, it's a huge trade-up for JD. I thought it was a bit of a subpar Herald usage, you know, allowing Shelly to make a very long walk, especially because they had just picked it up. You know, there wasn't like pressure on them, must throw it down now. But
pays off, still 2 turrets. Perhaps also, in this way, we're seeing the Malphite slowed down a little bit, which can give Flandre some more room. Wow, only now has he taken that bottom tier 1 turret. So even that's delayed by quite a bit, which is allowing Lumao and Clid to get back onto the map. Clid is actually looking for a gank, but Flandre already completed his recall.
It's really dangerous for JD Gaming at this point in the game to try to immediately force a Baron play, because you've been talking about how that Trinity Force was supposed to come out. It's now available on Aurelia, so you have big initial item power spikes for pretty much every single member, including 2 completed resistance items for Flandre. Snake are actually in a pretty comfortable window, especially now that Light's also level 11, that they could look for a big 5v5 and try to turn and grab this game back. And so you see a bit of a hunt going on for them, so kind of this passive early game could be made up for by Snake within the next 5 minutes.
Well, they do have that window to play with, but now 2 items completed on Yagao and Loken with that Morellos as an answer. Execution is calling for Clid, so he's ready just in case he ever gets the chance to skirmish with Flandre. He's already got the counter itemization, and already vision is starting to be cleared around this Baron. But there is still that Warden Pixel that you just saw. And with the next dragon spawning in 30 seconds being a mountain, JD, they get their pick of the litter.
And if we want to put a magnifying glass on JD Gaming and start to really hold them accountable to being a top-tier team, excuse me, then we need to think about what the next level for them is to reach that. And it is in their Baron preparation. For a long time, JD Gaming have been kind of the laugh of the LPL, the Dignitas, if you will, and that they constantly throw over Baron. Now, it has gotten better, but we still need to see more consistency. So this is kind of the big turning point for them to say, you know, you had your run, you had your game plan play out for the early game. Now it's time to see if you can close cleanly around a massive monster objective, and not just in taking it, but in defending it or using it as a viable pressure point. But here comes the 5v5, it looks like. Snake are ready.
Flandre is set up on top of that dragon. SOFM walks forward, and that's the dragon picked up. They turn on to SOFM. He split from his team. It's not a 5v5 as they just chase and lock him down. Zoom using the unstoppable force. Flandre inside of the pit, and Clid is just out over the wall. Maestro manages to get the save onto Flandre as Light takes damage from nowhere. The quick chase Shockwave finds 3, the knockup as Lumao sets up for his team, and it is 5 kills to 1. 4 for 1 trade. No, sorry, 4 for 0 for JD.
Massive swing for JD. They grab the dragon, the team fight, and now are able to walk over to the Baron. 17 seconds on SOFM, so depending on how frisky Guoguo wants to be, maybe he can stall it out. It's still relatively early in the game, so it'll take them a while to, as I say that, take down the Baron, but it doesn't look like there's any defense.
Yeah, it's really helping the damage. Look at the shred, 23.5 minutes in, such low resistances on the Baron, and that first Mountain Dragon gives them the shred they need to finish it off. Baron picked up by JD Gaming, 23.5 minutes in, and what was a window of opportunity for Snake ends up being just a pie in the sky, a pipe dream.
And I hope that they do the replay and we can actually see the top side of that fight, because so many members of Snake got zoned out and it looks like it was entirely on Yagao. But ultimately you have Flandre and SOFM who are thinking, we need to go in, we need to contest for the smite, but their composition only works if they're standing as 5. With both of them split like that, you know, the Mundo isn't invulnerable at that point. You don't have other people to contest with. You could just put all of the damage onto him and the tank line gets shredded before the carries even get to do anything.
And that's the setup from Loken and Yagao. The Sleepy Trouble Bubble and Dark Binding being tossed into the brush prevents those carries from getting into the fight. But here's the Baron Siege. Paddlestar finds Light, and he's forced to back away. He's got himself a Void Staff, but the Tier 2's already down.
And we spoke earlier that JD Gaming wouldn't need the Rift Herald to siege because their composition is so good at it naturally. So you stack a Baron on top of it, Snake have to engage.
Yeah, they're forcing a fight onto Lumao, but again, he's unbreakable. Unbreakable Will, unbreakable JD Gaming. They just follow up off the back of it. Even a Binding landing onto Glogol. Flandre is looking for a way in, even the command attack out of Light, but this siege is not stopping, and Zoom is busy working on the bottom tier 2. It is broken. Top lane is going to push in favor of JD, and Snake are constantly trying to decide which one to defend with. Looks like they're going to turn onto Zoom as the inhibitor is broken on the far side, but he just walks it off.
They need to be really careful not having access to Sejuani ultimate. The only big ultimate that they have is that Shockwave, and with Light being forced in, they're going to lose that inhib. They could lose the game here.
Oh, Lumao looks for the headbutt pulverized, but gets knocked back by SOFM. The inhibitor gets taken, and still JD have got 90 seconds on the Baron.
That was the best call that Snake have made all game, however, to just completely disengage as soon as Orianna was forced out of the fight. Because that's JD Gaming that are just fishing that if anyone is out of position, they're immediately going to pull the trigger. They catch one person, 2 waves are stacking in, game ends right there. Yeah. So they give up 2 inhibs, not great. It's just the nature of JD's composition, but at least they live to fight another day.
Yeah, and this is just fast and efficient play out of JD Gaming. I mean, we know they've been at the top of the standings, but this seems almost unprecedented for them with how they are pushing Snake over with very little resistance in how they're setting up around the map, how they're maneuvering around these objectives.
I mean, it just looks easy.
Yeah.
They're not even breaking a sweat. It's kind of been from point A to point B.
A light jog.
There haven't been any sort of missteps that we saw in Suning, and it comes back to this full circle idea that anytime we talk about JD, we almost have to talk about Suning hand in hand. These are our brand new organizations in the LPL, the next generation of talent, and you can see very clearly why JD Gaming are kind of head and shoulders above Suning at this point, where Suning also very methodical, but against a much weaker caliber of opponent, JD are just not making the same mistakes. We had questions about their Baron control. Yes, Snake went head first into that brick wall at full speed and kind of gave away the Baron, but I like the sense of mind and patience from JD Gaming not to force their hand around the Baron.
Playing around the back of that, Lumao will try to force this one though. He knocks Flandre in, forces out the stopwatch. Lumao's the target, Shockwave onto 2. Lumao uses his own. Flandre still getting burned down. There's the Lamb's respite. Knockup onto 3 is doing some work. SOFM chases it back in, but Lumao with a double knockup. Clit is going in from the side along with Yagao, trying to clean these kills up, but they've already lost Lumao and Zoom, and Snake are still standing as 5.
Might have spoken a bit too soon. A couple of mechanical errors over the course of that team fight, namely Lumao sacrificing himself to the gods as he actually stepped off of the Kindred ultimate, the Lamb's Respite, to look for his hard CC. And I think it was just impatience, frankly. They could have waited for their mid and bottom lanes to shove in. Yeah. And then tried to siege that one out, but Snake forced the fight, and Snake hold on.
We can forgive the sort of play like that because when you consider the
risk versus reward,
the cost benefit of that, the benefit, you win the game if you win that team fight. The loss, Snake maybe take mid tier 1.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a really good point. It's something that I do like to bring up in this idea that there's nothing left on the map. Like you're saying, there's no Baron, there's no Dragon right now. They take maybe a tier 1 as he goes off with the Lamb's Respite. He's like, I got him, coach.
I can do it.
Whereas if you take that down, the game is over. And it's also the fact that JD are really well aware of kind of the window that they're playing in or the pocket that they're playing in. Because if you look at Snake's composition, if this continues to scale out, you don't win.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
You auto lose that 5v5 because you lose kill pressure. So I feel like pressure is on. You know, the heat is there to force JD. Okay, we've made it this far. Now we really have to drive this one home, but just be a bit more conscientious of your super creep waves.
Well, they're still playing with that timing window, both mid and bottom for the time being. Without the Baron buff, they're now pushing back up to get even more damage onto this inhibitor. Yagao doesn't use his more sparkles to attack that turret, as he has now finished off a Rabadon's Death Cap. Triforce for Zoom. Also means he's going to start doing some work to that squishy backline, but there's Yagao starting to step up. Slowly but surely, that turret is getting lower and lower, and the super minions are ever pressing in.
So what JD Gaming need to do right now is just make sure that they stay really split up, Loken especially in the back line, and they're just keeping track of Light's Orianna ball. They're making sure that a 5-man Shockwave isn't possible, that a massive Sejuani ultimate isn't hitting and splitting the team fight or hitting and damaging multiple members, and Loken's just on defense. So you should see him stand behind the fight and then just make space for Yagao, and then no one will ever stand together. They want to fan out and hold hands across this lane.
Well, there they go. That's the spell shield. One more sparkles. The auto attack. Oh my gosh, it has no health, but finally it drops as Super Creeps have pulled Flandre away to the Nexus as Light is defending it. The inhibitor is finally broken just in time. Triple inhibs down pre-30 minutes for JD. And guess what's up in 45 seconds? That Baron and another Infernal already ready for them to take.
But it should be noted that both the mid and the bottom inhib fell relatively close together, and they will be spawning relatively soon. So there is some silver lining for Snake that they've held on to this point. The game hasn't ended. Their composition should theoretically outscale, or at least be easier to execute when we do get to late game scaling. And the pressure is still on for JD to end this one before a big 5v5, and Snake start fighting from the back foot out of this pit.
Well, it looks like that's what we're seeing right now. Guoguo's teleporting to group up with his team. SOFM has picked up an Elixir of Fortitude. He knows that now is the time. Infernal Dragon already being started off by Clid and Yagao. They're trying to rush through its health so they can get the double damage benefit of those two Infernal Dragons, but Snake are sitting on top of that Baron. They're setting up some wards for Flandre to look to flank from.
And what I actually would like them to do is just to send one member to poke and stall out Snake's Baron, and kind of send the rest of the team to engage on those inhibs, but instead it's going to be a face check.
That's Lumao. That's the Black Shield immediately popped. He uses Unbreakable and flashes. Caught by the Glacial Storm. Flandre's on the side. Zoom tries to keep him busy. Lumao knocks him under the turret, but that means Clid forced to flash away. Shockwave onto 3. Yagao is firing from the back, but the Lamb's Respite is keeping them alive, but it's also giving Snake an entry to dive the turret. Guoguo dives in. He's looking for the stun, chasing Clid into the back, uses his stopwatch to stall it out, but he's got nowhere to go. Guoguo finds the double kill. Zoom already died along with Lumao, but the tier 1 still standing, Baron still up, and super minions pushing onto the Nexus of Snake.
And it may be that JD Gaming have run out of time on their composition. Now you can see that Snake, they've got enough items, they understand that they are stronger in the 5v5, and they can just bully their way through this game. That tiny window of those two inhibs respawning, both mid and bottom, meant that Snake were able to leave their base safely to contest the 5v5 and now get the Baron. And with the Baron, if they can't use it offensively, they can at least use it defensively and continue to stall this out.
Now this is being scouted out. Maestro is dead. He's respawning now with Teleport. Dark Binding lands. Teleport coming out. I believe that is Light and Maestro going to the same ward. Light's out first, forces the flash. Loken split from his team. Lands the binding, goes down, and Yagao is able to outplay and escape with his life, but he has no mana. How are you going to prevent 5 members of Snake?
And meanwhile, out of all of that chaos, the Nexus Tower has fallen in the top side. So a single Nexus Tower still standing. I believe 2 minutes on that inhib.
Snake trying to burn through that Baron. Lumao is there. Clid is nearly there as well. That's the Sleepy Trouble Bubble in front of the pit. But the super minions are getting forward. Clid is trying to get in there. Flandre looking to zone him away. Yagao is trying to backtrack all the way to the Nexus. Baron now picked up. Shockwave is going to miss, but Snake, they've got the Baron, as Yagao will start his own recall. No, he's in a bad spot, but it's only one Nexus turret, and as you said, the window for JD is closing.
Oh, Yagao, indecisiveness. So we criticize Snake so heavily for their early game indecisiveness. It doesn't matter because of the security blanket of their late game composition. Yagao, he didn't know, are we helping to look for the steal? I have the Zoe damage from the back of the pit, and instead he actually pinged the Nexus. He wanted them to stall out to go for the end, but they decide to pull back on the call. Snake now have the Baron, they have the superior scaling composition, and they're going to have 3 inhibs very soon.
It's 3 minutes now on that Baron buff as Snake now taking control of the game and starting to try and open up the map. They don't have any teleports, so they're mostly going to have to play as 4-1 or all together, but here that starts again. Snake setting up for the pick and finding it. JD take the bait.
And there's no reason really for JD to face check like this. You know that Snake are in the area, you know that they're going to set a trap, and you should know that they have a much stronger 5v5. You don't want to fight them through Fog of War because of their wombo combo. Instead, why not threaten the inhib and leave someone to poke around on the Baron? Because ultimately, you're not going to take down the 2 inhibs before Snake burn the Baron, but you can at least try to delay the empowered recalls and keep them locked in their base if you're able to clear those structures.
Instead, it is just Snake now taking the tempo in this. They're looking to break down the mid-tier 1. They've actually waited out a full minute and a half on that Baron buff as the minion wave was cleared out. Snake trying to deny any deep teleport wards for Zoom, perhaps remove any chance of a flank. Now Zoom is busy keeping Flandre busy, level 16 to Flandre's level 18. Now the push onto the tier 1. Snake break it down. Even Flandre has gone missing at that level 18. 5 items on the Mundo. What is going to kill him?
At this point, again, risk versus reward. JD Gaming actually just needs to let this go and try to minimize the losses. They can't afford to take a fight when the creep wave is this close and the Baron buff is empowering them. I think you give this inhib away and just not lose the game because you drafted yourself into a mid-game composition. Try to find the Miracle team fight where Snake just either get picked out or misexecute, and then try to end the game off of that.
And with Flandre so tanky in the front, Snake are just able to walk up and take this inhibitor. Now it's even in gold, 35 minutes in, but Elder Dragon is spawning in 90 seconds with that double Infernal. That could be what chains it as Flandre gets caught out. The CC chain begins, and he's going to flash over the wall. Clid looking for the chase, the slow. Clid gets the auto attack and the mark kill.
I mean, that was one of the picks that they were looking for. Might not mean much, depending on how hungry JD Gaming are. Again, there is definitely...
You talked about Windows Frost. Yeah, this is one.
There's a fire underneath them, and it looks like even with just the Mundo dead, they're going to try to force this. But the Shockwave is still there, which is why Light is trying to hide. He's got the control ward, hide in Fog of War, and find a surprise. So, still no Mundo, still a big wombo combo.
Yeah, that next minion wave about 30 seconds from getting away, and Flandre will be up by then. They finished off 1 inhibitor. Are they going to look for 3, or are they going to look for the end of the game? Calls going onto the inhibitors for now. The top inhib goes down. Super minion out of the mid lane with Baron buff is going to wear off as JD have to reposition back against the wall. 16 seconds on that Mundo, and still JD are playing with this window of opportunity. But they decide not to risk it. They do not want to be caught here. Flash gets Yagao away. Black Shield onto Lumao to prevent the stun. Guoguo goes in, but Unbreakable Will means Lumao can walk it off.
Flandre has teleport, and he's up in 2 seconds.
Ping
with
onto the
deep
ward.
Vision. Here he comes.
That's the one. Dark Binding misses now. Guoguo looking for the stun, but Loken is split from his team. The target is instead Lumao, who flashes away. That support. He gives himself up in sacrifice. And look at the back door. Loken and Yagao are making their way back to the Nexus.
But the problem is again, the indecisiveness on these late game calls. They don't have the creep wave, so they wouldn't be able to threaten the end of the game unless they came in through the top side.
They're going through the vision right now, and the teleport out of Zoom. They're going to try to end the game right here. Zoom is tanky enough. And I believe Loken, he's actually down by the super minions. They're just going to try to push it down with the fortification. Clid is trying to do the damage. Zoom has got the Triforce to get through. Teleport is going to be activated to try and stop this. They turn onto the Nexus, the back door, and the Lamb's Respite. JD are able to end the game. 37 minutes in against Snake.
And so many times JD have been in this exact situation and stumbled on that call, and finally it connects against the 3rd place team in the Western Conference. If you don't know who JD Gaming are, I've said it again, I'm gonna say it now. You need to watch this team.
Yes.
You need to figure them out. They are effectively the LPL's Griffin right now, not sitting in 1st place, but they have so much potential behind them, and there's a very real chance that this team makes a deep playoff run and a possible world's berth.
This is a team that upset RNG in their first game in the new stadium. And look at that gold difference, 8,600 gold lead, balancing out to 0 just for JD to go that final meter to finish the race.
And Rusty said the hard yards, and that's what it was for JD Gaming. In their composition, they recognized when they had hit a brick wall that they were no longer going to be able to fight Snake, and they had to outthink them. And Snake are one of the most experienced and one of the most creative teams that we have in the LPL, and JD didn't just flex their brawn on them, they flexed their brain. And that's what's impressive about this very young squad, who we don't know where their potential is. We don't know where that ceiling is, and JD, I don't think they've hit it yet.
they've still got a lot of room to grow. I mean, they're taking wins off of really top-tier teams. So far, their only losses have been to Invictus Gaming and TOP. They will be playing against EDG before they get out of cross-conference, so there is an opportunity for us to see how they compare against those teams. But still, we're looking at Snake and saying, what happened? Did they just have the security blanket of the composition around their shoulders and say, we can wait this out? We expect JD will make a mistake, and that disrespect punished them?
Well, they definitely played very indecisive in the early game and lost a lot of ability to enter mid-game even footing. By the time Snake turned online, it was almost too little too late.
Yeah.
And JD Gaming weren't inexperienced enough to not punish that.
Yeah, well, bit of a tragedy for Snake. Hopefully they'll be able to fix things up in Game 2. That said, it's time for our analysts to break down that Game 1 JD win.
It was quite a back and forth game one between JD as well as Snake Esports there, Russ, because it looked from the start that JD should be the team that took it. They had an 8,000 gold lead, which they eventually lost, but still managed to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to explain it for certain. Back and forth is an apt description. Now, for me, I feel like it was comprehensively in JD's favor until they kind of got scaled on, and you can see a lot of this reflected through the draft. So for me, JD, they had early game, they had a lot of control there, and then they had the late game by having a Kindred and having that AD carry role available. And the reason that I say that is if JD came in with a lead, which they did, then you hit late game and suddenly you've got the Malphite ultimate that outranges the Orianna ultimate, and the presence of a winning composition having a Malphite. And like, imagine being light in this situation. Imagine being Snake's bottom laner as an Orianna. You need to hit a multi-man shockwave, but if you even step close, there's an Alistar flash headbutt pulverize, there's a Malphite running at your face, and a Kindred's going to keep them alive anyway. So I thought with the early game lead that JD got, they had the late game anyway. The hiccups were going to be at item spikes, going to be at mid game, going to be the 3 item point where a Mundo comes online when Orianna truly spikes and comes online regardless of who her opponent's composition is going to be. That's usually the Void Staff. And amusingly enough, that was when Snake did find themselves a semblance of a lead, but they were so far behind by that point, they'd lost all 3 inhibitors basically by that point, that they were stuck and they couldn't win the game. If the game was even footing or even not as bad as it was, Snake probably would have won.
Well, let's take a look at the journey of how we got to that backdoor at the end of the match, because it started with a dragon fight, which we actually saw JD take over Snake. So this was the first major lead for them. Laning phase was going well for JD Gaming, but this fight was where they broke open the lead against Snake.
Yeah, this was the moment where they get the team fight, they capitalize, they find SOFM, as well as the Dragon, they find Flandre, and Light also does find himself in the death chamber there with Yagao, I believe, getting him on the backside. And through all of this, this is at 23 minutes in the game, roughly. That immediately translates to a Baron. They win a team fight from Dragon. They run straight over. The team fight victory was so massive. And this is, again, another byproduct of Snake being a little bit too slow to make decisions, a bit too slow to make plays. And even when they were reacting to things, it felt like they were never truly aware of what JD were doing. And for the first 23 minutes of the game, leading up to that point, JD completely read them like a book. They outplayed them across the map. Clid was jungling better than SOFM, which is something I very rarely get an opportunity to say as well. SOFM is always the one who gets the CS lead. Not going to happen, not against the Kindred. And suddenly JD, they looked like they were poised to win and nothing was going to stop them.
Yeah, so they had an 8,000 gold lead after that. That's after they picked up the Baron and after winning the Dragon fight as well. But it started to swing back in Snake's favor. They found a favorable team fight where they were able to pick up Baron for themselves afterwards. And this turned around the match for them.
And a lot of this is, firstly, you look at the items, there's 2 big items done for that Orianna, including the Void Staff. The Trinity Force was there for the Aurelia, and suddenly, with a Mundo that had his items completed as well, he's pretty much unstoppable in the front line. So they find opportunities to go forwards, and this is a lot of it, like Snake finally getting their vision control down to play, and actually setting up so that their opponents have to come to them. Prior to that Baron bait starting, their mid laner teleported from outside of the base to the middle lane, just to walk over to the Baron and do it on time, and knowing full well that JD were going to go to Infernal. So this is the best decision that Snake had made all game, besides not losing the game when they were inside their own base by playing passively.
Yeah, they played passively, but that came back to bite them at the end of the match, because while they were playing passively against JD, who had an 8,000 gold lead, they lost all of their inhibitor turrets. So even though they picked up the Baron, even though it looked like they were going to win every single team fight afterwards, it all came down to one final Hail Mary play from JD, which was successful.
And ultimately, the thing that hurts them the most here, Snake, is that they were beyond passive. They were too passive. And this is that moment where JD, it looks like they're going to change their mind, but really they're just waiting for the minion wave to pass, waiting for the opportunity to place some vision down. Snake looking at the Elder Dragon. And this moment with the teleport coming in, game was effectively just going to be over unless everyone recalls. And you'll notice that the Morgana's rolled out in this situation. You're looking at the game ending, but Loken is ulting everyone. He's stopping all of the recalls. A teleport is the only thing that really gets through, and by then it's over.
Yeah.
So the whole team cohesively acknowledges that the way they're going to end this game is by having bigger brains than their opponents for certain, and by having all 3 inhibitors down already prior. They set themselves up to do that brilliantly by super minions crashing in and letting them actually make that play.
Good timing. That was 2 teleports that got cancelled off the back half of that. Aurelia and Dr. Mundo couldn't make it into the final base defense. It was only Light. By that time, it was too little too late. JD were able to break the base, and through turret fortification, doesn't matter. Still pick up the victory.
Yep.
But they have to be careful of that shakiness we saw around 28 minutes into the match, because that can come back and bite them in future matches.
I do think that, you know, first and foremost, we have to give some credit to JD overall for having the strong first 25 minutes. You mentioned the 28-minute hiccup, but that's also where you have to give some credits to Snake, because I have nothing but bad things written down in my notebook right now for things that Snake did for the first 25. But after that point, when their composition came online, they still played the comp well. They got the team fights well, and this really did become a battle of 2 team fighting teams, but one acknowledging that they're not going to win it. So they had to play abstract, had to do something different. That ultimately won them the game. So with all of these strengths and weaknesses that we have seen, I think the draft is a major part of that. I do think that going into the next game, Snake can remedy a lot of their early game woes. There was a lot of junglers banned in this game. SOFM wasn't really empowered to do anything. I think coming into the second one, they'll empower Snake's jungler more in SOFM. Whereas on JD's side, that slow, methodical play may actually get pressured. And we have to look at how they're going to explore their way through that. And do they pick more late game guarantees in their composition?
But one thing JD were able to pick up from the draft itself is Zoe onto Yagao, who picks up MVP for that first match. It's one of his signature picks. We saw him cheat towards the Nexus a couple of times, attempting to go for that backdoor, and eventually made the final call to do just that.
At 3-0 and 3, not a death to be seen by our man of the match this time around. Yagao and Zoe, one of the few players that was always going to pick the champion if it's available. There was Yagao, there was Knight. There's recently been a couple of other players like Scout and Cool who love to play, even Gung. We've got a lot of Zoes, but this guy was the one who looked like a god at the very start in picking the champion, and still rings true today. He commands respect when he gets the pick, and Snake should not give that to him again.
Don't give this man Zoe. He synergizes too well with Clit, especially when he gets that champion. It's one of the main staple set pieces that JD likes to run all the time. Run the Zoe with someone who can put pressure in the jungle to actually assist with that mid lane duo.
The thing with Zoe is there are counter picks available for it, but no one can really counter Yagao's Zoe. He's just too clean.
Yeah, he is too clean and picked up MVP for match 1, but it's just match 1 of a best of 3 series. We're going to go into a quick break. Be back with game 2 in just a bit.
相信这支年轻气盛的京东，相信过程。